There is a story whispered among monks in the mountains of Wudang. A woman once approached the master and asked, "How can I remain in his thoughts when I am no longer in his sight?" The master closed his eyes, drew 3 circles in the dust, and said, "Speak only 3 words, and if your spirit is aligned, they will echo in his heart long after your shadow has gone." Today, I reveal this secret, not only for love, but for alignment. Not for control, but for connection. For there are days in each month, hidden windows of time, when a single word, a single thought, a single presence can ripple through a man's mind like thunder on still water. Stay until the end, for the final 3 words are not what you expect. They are not from the tongue, but from the soul, and once spoken, they will not be forgotten. There are moments in life when the silence between thoughts speaks louder than any voice. These are not accidents of time, but invitations, subtle doorways through which destiny whispers. If you've ever paused and felt a sensation you could not name, a heaviness in the air, a pull in the chest that defies logic, then you have already begun to hear the first language of fate. They say that monks, in their long years of stillness, learn not to chase answers, but to listen for them. One does not need to retreat to a mountain to hear this silence. It is within you. The first key to unlocking the journey of sacred connection, whether with another soul or with the soul within, is learning to hear the whisper of intuition. This whisper is not dramatic. It arrives like morning mist, soft, unseen, but shifting the entire landscape of awareness. It is the quiet nudge that tells you not to send that message, or the deep breath that keeps you still just 1 second longer. In a world flooded with noise, intuition is the one current that flows beneath it all, ancient, wise, and unbroken. A Zen parable tells of a young student who once asked his master, "How do I know if I am on the right path?" The master led him to a forest and pointed to a stream. "Do you hear it?" he asked. The student strained his ears, but heard nothing. "No, master, I only hear the wind and the birds." The master smiled gently. "Then you are not yet ready." Years passed. The student returned, aged not by time, but by trials. The master asked again, "Do you hear it now?" The student stood in silence, and then his eyes softened. Yes, beneath the wind, beneath the birds, the stream never stopped flowing. I just never listened deep enough. Such is the whisper of intuition. It does not scream. It does not argue. It waits for you to become still enough to remember its presence. In the realm of relationships, this whisper is what tells you when someone is thinking of you, not from ego, but from energy. It is the reason you suddenly remember someone seconds before they call. It is what wakes you at 3033 a.m., as if your soul has received a message not yet understood by your mind. But this whisper also requires discipline. For not every tug is true. The ego can mimic the soul's voice, especially when desperation clouds discernment. That is why the path of stillness must accompany the path of listening. Without stillness, intuition becomes static. With stillness, it becomes sacred guidance. A real-life example comes from nature itself. The wild deer does not run from every sound in the forest. It lifts its head, listens, not with panic, but with presence, and only moves when the energy confirms a shift. This is intuition in action. Fear-based reaction, but deeply attuned response. So it is with us. When you feel he is thinking of you, or dreaming of you, or missing you, it is not imagination if it arises in stillness. It is a ripple across the quiet pond of your being. The problem is not that we cannot hear. It is that we do not pause long enough to discern. The ancient Taoist sage Zhuangzi once said, "The wise man hears the unheard and sees the unseen." He does not chase the wind, but listens to its path. This listening becomes especially crucial during the sacred windows of the month. times when the veil between thoughts, feelings, and energy becomes thin. Between the third and fifth, for example, many experience vivid dreams, déjà vu, or sudden heart pulls towards someone they have not spoken to in months. These are not random. These are alignments. If during this time your body feels restless without reason, if your emotions shift like weather despite external calm, do not dismiss it with it. Close your eyes and ask, is this mine? Sometimes what we feel is not ours, but someone else reaching for us energetically. Wisdom lies not in reacting, but in observing. To act from intuition is powerful. To wait for alignment before acting, that is mastery. As we journey further, we come to the next key, the SAS windows in time. These are not merely dates on a calendar, but energetic doorways. As tides respond to the moon, human emotions, memories, and connections respond to unseen currents that move through time. Every month carries within it certain dates where energy amplifies. These dates are not chosen by culture or tradition. They are revealed through observation, pattern, and presence. In the same way that a skilled farmer knows when the soil is ripe for planting, the wise soul learns when the moment is ripe for speaking, connecting, or stepping back. Between the years 9th and 12th, the energy softens. People become more inward. Reflection deepens. Past connections resurface. Not always physically, but emotionally, spiritually. You may find that he dreams of you without knowing why. You may find your name lingers in his thoughts without any message sent. These are portals of remembrance. To act during this window with clarity and purity of intention often plant seeds that bloom days or even weeks later. But just as there are days for connection, there are also days for caution. Between the year 14th and 16th, a shadow often passes through. Communication may falter. Words may be misunderstood. Emotional waves rise, not from truth, but from old fears being stirred. These are not days to initiate, but to observe. To rush during this time is like sailing into a storm without reading the sky. There is a lesser known quote from the Indian mystic Kabir, who once wrote, "The path is narrow as the edge of a blade, but time is the hand that steadies the walker." To walk in awareness is to honor time, not as a master, but as a rhythm. When you speak during the wrong rhythm, your words are lost. When you align with the rhythm, even silence becomes remembered. Consider a musician. They may have the most beautiful notes to play, but if they play them offbeat, the song becomes chaos. Timing does not weaken love, it refines it. It teaches patience, presence, and surrender. A real life reflection of this truth comes in personal growth. Think of a moment when you acted too soon, sent a message from anxiety, made a decision from fear, or stepped forward when you had not yet healed. The result is rarely peace. But when you have waited, when you have aligned, when your inner weather has cleared, then even a single word spoken lands like thunder. Not because of volume, but because of timing. So now, you must begin to feel time differently. Not as hours or deadlines, but as energy. Feel when the current is with you. Feel when it pulls back. Between the 17th and 21st, for example, life often tests what has been planted. It asks you to wait longer than you wish. It stretches your faith. But remember, it is during this stretch that your roots grow deeper. And between the 22nd and 25th days, when transformation energy arrives, if you have honored the previous phases, you will not need to act. The right connections return. The wrong ones dissolve, not by your doing, but by your alignment. As the Persian mystic Attar once said, "Be like a tree and let the dead leaves fall. To live by intuition and timing is to live like nature." And nature never rushes. The rose does not bloom because the bee asks it to. It opens when the sun and soil and rain have aligned. You, too, are part of this sacred rhythm. You are not forgotten. You are being prepared. So when you feel that he is thinking of you, Trust the whisper, but let time carry the message. Let energy do what force never can. Speak not when you need to be heard. When your soul says, now, then your presence will not only be remembered, it will be felt. And in that stillness, in that right moment, even without words, he will remember you. Because what is real is never lost. It is simply waiting for the right season to return. In a quiet temple carved into the side of a mountain, there is a lantern that has burned for over 200 years. The monks who live there say it never goes out, not because it is protected from wind or storm, but because someone is always watching. The fire continues, not through chance, but through silent devotion. So too, there are souls in this world whose hearts burn with quiet light. They are not loud, they are not always seen, but their presence is unforgettable. These are the ones who have chosen the path, not the path of seeking validation or control, but the path of raw awareness, the chosen path. In a world of distraction, where many move from one moment to the next with restless hands and anxious hearts, few stop long enough to hear the deeper music that life plays beneath the noise. To walk the chosen path is to become attuned to this music. It is not a physical road, but a state of inner clarity, a posture of the soul that sees meaning where others see accident, that reads the symbols of life not as coincidence, but as guidance. To walk this path is not to be better, but to be awake. You begin to see signs not only in sacred texts, but in the curve of a leaf, in the delay of a bus, in the unexpected word from a stranger. You begin to feel that life is not happening to you, it is speaking to you. A Shaolin tale tells of a novice who asked his teacher, "When will I become enlightened?" The master replied, "When you see no difference between your step and the ground beneath it." The novice frowned, "But I already know that the ground is always there." The master touched the earth gently and said, "Knowing is not the same as honoring. To walk the chosen path is to honor every step, every silence, every moment. And this awareness changes how you connect. When you send a message to someone from awareness, your words are felt, even if left unread. When you release someone from awareness, the release does not create distance. It creates memory, a sacred kind, the kind that echoes. There is a hidden truth. You are never truly forgotten by someone whose soul was once in resonance with yours. But remembrance does not always come through force. It comes when your energy remains clear, unattached, and anchored in presence. In everyday life, consider how you remember someone. Is it because they clung to you, or because they touched you in a way that lingered long after the moment had passed? The people who leave the deepest impressions are rarely those who shout the loudest. They are those who were us fully present when they were with us, and gracefully silent when they were not. This is the power of the chosen path. You begin to realize that your presence, when aligned, speaks even in absence. You no longer chase, you align. You no longer ask to be remembered. You become impossible to forget. There is a quote attributed to the Japanese Zen master Ryokan F. "When I sit in silence, the world arrives to listen. When I leave, the flowers remember my feet." Such is the nature of spiritual energy. It imprints without demand. It leaves without taking. It becomes part of the memory of those who once encountered it, not through effort, but through grace. And so we arrive at a deeper truth, a key hidden in the folds of this prophecy, the power of the 3 words of echo. The mind expects these 3 words to be seductive, clever, or magical. But the soul knows differently. Words that create lasting impression are not those that tether. They are those that is release. I release you. At first glance, these words feel like an ending. But on the chosen path, every release is a return to self. It is not a dismissal. It is a sacred offering. When spoken not from bitterness, but from clarity, these words echo louder than 1,000 pleas, because they do not beg. They bless. In Zen teaching, there is a story of a woman who came to the temple to seek peace after the loss of a lover. She cried every day before the Bodhi tree. One day, the abbot came and handed her a small bell. He said, "Ring this bell every time you feel the urge to call his name." She did. Days turned into weeks. One morning, she came to the abbot, smiling through tears. "The bell is quiet," she said. The abbot nodded. "Because the echo now lives in you. You no longer need him to hear it." The words, "I release you," are like this bell. They do not erase the connection. They refine it. They strip it of need, of attachment, of expectation. What remains is memory in its purest form, an echo that lingers because it was given freedom. In practical life, we often misunderstand letting go. We think it means indifference. But true release is not apathy. It is profound respect. It is saying, "I trust the rhythm of the universe more than the rhythm of my fears." And in doing so, you create space, not just for another to return, but for yourself to expand. Imagine the petals of a lotus. They do not hold the bee hostage. They open fragrant and whole and allow the bee to come and go. Yet the bee returns again and again, not because it was trapped, but because the flower never clutched. Such is the power of detachment with presence. When you say, "I release you," you declare to the universe, "My worth is not in being remembered. My worth is in being aligned." And paradoxically, that very alignment makes your presence unforgettable. There is a lesser known verse from the Tao Te Ching. The softest thing in the world overcomes the hardest. Water carves the stone not by force, by patience. So too, the heart moves the world without trying. This is what these three words do. They are soft. They are gentle. Their impact is deep. They shift energy. They remove resistance. They allow space for true remembrance to rise, not the remembrance forced by longing, but the kind birthed from sacred presence. You may wonder, if I say these words, will he return? That is not the question. The true question is, will you return to yourself? For when you do, all that is meant to find you will come not because you called, but because you became the place where peace resides. And so, when you find yourself holding too tightly, fearing loss, or waiting for a sign, pause, breathe, speak the words not just with your lips, but with your being. "I release you." Say it to him. Say it to your past. Say it to the version of yourself that thought love must be chased to be real. And then step back into your temple. Let the river carry your offering. In that release, something sacred begins to stir, because when remembrance comes without clinging, it does not fade, it echoes through time, through thought, through the quiet corners of the heart. And whether or not he calls, he will feel you. Not because you demanded his attention, but because you became still enough for your spirit to speak. And the spirit, when aligned, does not whisper. It resounds in every sacred text, in every tradition that has walked the earth in silence. There is one principle that remains unbroken, and for us all things move in cycles. The rising of the moon, the falling of leaves, the return of dreams, all are bound by a rhythm older than time itself. This rhythm is not always understood by the mind. It does not obey logic or hurry. It unfolds according to divine timing. When you walk the path of self, mastery and awakening, you begin to recognize that life is not late, and love is not lost. It is simply circling back through cycles you cannot yet see. There is a tale whispered among Taoist sages of a fisherman who lived by a wide and silent river. Each day he would cast his net into the waters, whether he caught anything or not. One morning a traveler asked, "Why do you cast your net even when the river is still?" The fisherman smiled and replied, because the river moves beneath the surface. The fish return not when I call them, but when the river tells them to. My task is not to chase, but to be present when they arrive. This is the nature of divine timing. When you are aligned with it, you no longer force outcomes. You begin to trust in what is unseen. You begin to understand that love, opportunity, and transformation come not when you are frantic, but when you are ready. There is no loss, only ripening. And so we learn to wait, not passively, but attentively. Waiting in this sense is a spiritual art. It is not simply the absence of action. It is the presence of trust. In our daily lives, we often mistake silence for rejection or delay for denial, but life does not rush to meet the impatient. Instead, it prepares the heart through waiting. That text not yet sent, closure not yet received, that reunion not yet arrived, all are resting in the sacred arms of time. A woman may feel forgotten by a man who once seemed to see her soul, but what if the silence is not a void, but a recalibration? What if both hearts are being stretched into clarity before the next crossing? Just as the earth turns slowly toward spring, love too may need time to thaw old wounds before it blossoms once more. Nature offers her own parable. The bamboo tree does not break the earth until its 5th year of planting. For years nothing is visible, yet beneath the soil, its roots are growing deeper and deeper, anchoring it for the sudden and powerful growth to come. In the 5th year, it grows over 80 feet in a matter of weeks. Such is the way of transformation. It comes slowly and then all at once. Divine timing requires faith not in outcomes, but in the unseen preparation taking place behind every delay. The philosopher Epictetus once wrote, "No great thing is created suddenly. There must be time. Let it grow, let it unfold." These words are not only for buildings or books, for the architecture of the soul. And so, when you feel restless, when your heart asks, "Why has he not remembered?" or "Why does my life still feel paused?" remember that the cycle is still turning. What is yours will find you when it can meet you with equal clarity. Not a moment sooner. Not a breath too late. From the 22nd to the 25th hours of each month, the cycle begins to shift. This is a time when energy moves from stillness into activation. What was dormant begins to stir. Dreams may become vivid, messages may arrive unexpectedly, old emotions may resurface, not as regression, as release. If you have prepared during the quiet phases, these days become a sacred threshold. If not, they become overwhelming, which leads us gently into the final key as preparation before the storm. There is a certain kind of stillness that arrives not from peace, from the silence before change. It is the moment the wind stops, just before lightning splits the sky. It is the breath the earth takes before the mountain rumbles. In your spiritual journey, stillness is a sign that something is coming, not to harm you, but to shape you. The problem is that many meet this silence with fear. They interpret it as abandonment, forgetting that even in nature, the seed must sit in darkness before it breaks into the light. In a monastery deep in the Himalayan ridges, an elder once told a student, "The storm will not ask if you are ready. It will arrive when it must. But if your spirit is prepared, it will not drown you. It will baptize you." Preparation is not about planning every moment. It is about clearing your energy, letting go of the weight of resentment, releasing the grip of control, strengthening your roots so that when the wind does come, you bend, but do not break. In the realm of relationships, this preparation may look like stepping back from someone you once held too tightly. May look like silence, not as punishment, but as sanctuary. It may look like healing your own wounds so you no longer bleed them into another's life. It is in these quiet acts that the greatest strength is built. A real life example rests in the cycles of the moon. The new moon is invisible to the eye. It does not announce itself with brilliance. Yet it is the most powerful time to plant intentions. Why? Because it is the moment when the energy is gathering strength unseen. If you wait until the full moon to begin, you miss the potency of the beginning. So too, when life feels dark and unclear, is often the moment your deepest transformation is beginning, quietly, invisibly, but with great promise. The mystic Lala once wrote, "I found the silence in the storm, and I stayed there until I became the storm's song." Oh. To prepare is not to hide from the coming wave. It is to learn its rhythm, to find your breath within it, and to rise when it does. Between the Asher 17th and 21st, the storm often begins to gather. This is when your intentions, beliefs, and energy are tested. Life will not ask if you still want transformation. It will ask if you are ready to leave it. The old version of you may be tempted to react, to reach out in fear, to chase what is withdrawing. But the prepared version of you knows to pause, to wait, to return to your breath. Not because you don't care, but because you know that chasing in the storm only scatters what is meant to stay. This preparation becomes your power. While others panic, you center. While others resist, you receive. You understand that storms do not come to destroy, they come to cleanse, to remove what is weak, to reveal what is true. And when the storm passes, and it always does, you emerge not shattered, but sharpened, not empty, but awakened, running through, and those who once looked away will look again, not because you called them back, but because the light you carry now commands remembrance. This is the gift of divine timing and preparation. You do not force your way into fate. You become the one fate seeks. So let the cycles turn, let the silence come. Let the river swell and the winds rise. You are not lost in the storm. You are becoming the eye of it. And when he remembers you, not as a thought, but as a feeling, as a presence that stirs something he cannot name, it will not be because you waited in fear. It will be because you waited in stillness. And in that stillness, your soul spoke. It is not your words that echo. It is your energy prepared in silence that remains. And so now, as the cycle completes, take this with you. Be as the fisherman, present, faithful, trusting in the river. Be as the bamboo, growing roots before rising high. Be as the moon, knowing your power even when unseen. Be as the storm, cleansing, fierce, full of grace. And most of all, be as the one who walks quietly but is remembered deeply. Because the soul does not forget the presence that met it in truth. And divine timing never forgets those who waited with open hands. When the scroll has been read, let the words rest in silence. Let them find the heart they were meant for. Say the 3 words. Say them not for control, but for freedom. And then step back into your temple. Let the river of fate carry what belongs to you. If he thinks of you all day, it is not because you clung, but because you let go with power. Walk with grace, speak with soul, and trust the timing written in the stars.